as he again expressed confidence that she had made all this fuss about the guy. The girl clearly did not understand what he wanted from her when he spoke, that he was very worried about her. Finally, he took her by the chin and said that he could introduce her to one person, because she had neither intelligence nor talent, but she had an appearance. Deborah furiously withdrew his hand, slamming it away, asking what exactly he was talking about. Looking anxiously at his hand, he said that she should learn etiquette and not embarrass their family. With a sly grin, he mentioned Louis Gazelle, saying that they would soon have a chance to meet. The girl fell into a sediment when she remembered that this was the same pervert who molested the main character. Their eyes crossed when she told him to stop interfering in her life and give him money if he was so worried. Not wanting to give up, he mentioned her feelings for Philip, saying that such a savage did not reach his level. He arrogantly began to enumerate the noble families to which she was barred, but she interrupted him, saying that she did not want to marry. Obviously not expecting such a turn, he looked at his sister in surprise. Deborah confidently stated that she wanted to be unmarried, which automatically struck him on the spot. The girl's brother could not fully believe what she said, so he continued to ask about it over and over again. He asked her if she really wanted to stop being a noblewoman and go to a convent, hinting that she herself did not know what she was talking about. Rubbing the back of his head tiredly, he advised never to say such words to anyone again, so as not to destroy their family. Finally, he decided to leave the girl alone, finally stating that Louis would be a good match for her. Deborah clearly began to boil with anger when the guy said that he was going to return to this conversation. Fortunately for her, after a couple of minutes, she still found herself in her room, taking the coveted position. She cursed, realizing that according to the laws of her empire, all girls must marry after coming of age. Deborah was extremely indignant, but she soberly understood that her brother Belek was much more influential than she was. Such a significant difference in their status greatly increased the likelihood of his ill-fated plan being carried out. The girl scared the hell out of the maid when she suddenly ordered her to come up to her. She burned with fear when Deborah said she wanted to ask her something. Instilling even more fear with her appearance, she asked what would happen if a daughter from an aristocratic family did not want to get married. The maid wanted to sink into the ground when she said that no one had ever done such a thing before. Deborah asked her to express her assumptions, after which she replied that this girl could lose her title. She looked ahead with detachment when she confirmed her brother's words that first she would be expelled and then sent to a monastery. Deborah began to consider her options in a frightened way, realizing that in this case, the ending of the book is no different from what awaits her. She called it strange that no one had ever given a single refusal before. The maid gasped, remembering something when she asked what would happen if she was offered a man she didn't like. Deborah beamed when she told her about a case when a miss ran away with a commoner. As far as she knew, this girl had accepted the new title and had no problems, but she was a great sorceress. Deborah decided to find out more about her and ask if she got her title because of her contribution to the war. She immediately stopped, realizing that she did not have any abilities and skills that could distinguish her in society. A sudden thought dawned on her that she would somehow be able to buy herself a title. Images of the jewel-filled chests she currently had immediately arose in her mind. She saddened over the table, realizing that this was clearly not enough, because she didn't even have money. The girl realized with annoyance that this would not be enough even to acquire the cheapest title, and she was running out of time. Deborah decided to plead the fact that she was studying at the academy and postpone the marriage in order to earn money to avoid it. Like a paranoid, she immediately closed her trunk as soon as she heard an insistent knock on the door. As it turned out, at such a late time, her father came to her, who did not warn her about his visit. She looked at George in surprise when he asked her to talk. The girl immediately agreed but still did not understand what exactly had happened. Thinking that he wanted to talk about marriage, she decided to protect herself by giving him a new letter. Closing his eyes wearily, George declared that he had not come to her for a letter. There was an awkward silence in the room as he told her to name what she wanted. She looked at her father uncomprehendingly, after which he said that he would give it to her. Deborah replied that she agreed to read him letters every time white flowers bloomed and snow fell. George said he understood her eagerness to be the link between him and Marion, though his face did not tell it. He also assured her that this was not a test, so she could say whatever she wanted. Deborah understood that her father was not one to throw words to the wind, and it was better not to refuse him. He looked at the girl in surprise when she asked him to invest in his business. The girl modestly said that she had one very good idea when he asked if she really wanted to run a business. This was a real surprise for the man, as he thought to the end that she would want a pink diamond. The Duke finally resigned himself to this thought, so the next thing he did was to ask how much money she needed. Deborah immediately wrote the bag on a piece of paper and handed it to her father. The man considered this amount to be scanty, so he was surprised that she was going to create a business with her. The girl beamed with joy when he hesitated and agreed to send her the money. Their fruitful meeting finally ended, after which the Duke left the room and headed to his study. He was still wondering how she had come up with the idea in the first place, given the frivolity of her actions. The man suggested that she finally realized that she could not get the diamond, so she wanted to replace it with something important. Previously, he had promised everyone that Deborah would not buy the diamond and did not insist, realizing that buying it would shake her father's authority. Not knowing how it really happened, George was convinced that she had thought of everything. He was pleased with the sudden change in her behavior, as well as the fact that she began to think a lot about something. The Duke's heart was filled with pride from the understanding of how hard his daughter was trying, despite the fact that he did not notice it and did not help. Determined, he turned to his assistant, preparing to make an unexpected decision. The Duke ordered him to buy a pink diamond no matter what. A few days later, the expensive jewelry was already flaunting on the table in front of the girl. Deborah was blown away, not understanding how her father could come to such a decision. She glanced at the lines in the letter where her father addresses her, pointing out that her kindness should be rewarded. As if stung, the girl opened her eyes in surprise when he wrote that he could not thank her only with some money. She did not fully understand how it happened that she behaved like a fraud, but in the end she received gifts and compliments. Despite all the spirits of conscience, she still came to the conclusion that it was very convenient to be a villain. Deborah remembered her past human life, where she had always been kind to others, but as soon as she refused, she began to be despised. She thoughtfully twisted the expensive jewelry in her hands, realizing that she had lived her life in vain. As she admired the beauty of the jewelry, she couldn't help but wonder if Philip would kill her if he saw the necklace on her. Deborah thought about selling it, but immediately assumed her father's angry reaction. In the end, she took another look at the investments she received from her father and was happy that she had the initial capital. Her mind was immediately filled with thoughts about how much she could earn and whether the business would help her avoid marriage. The girl serenely came up with new tasks for herself until one familiar seal attracted her attention. Deborah's eyes automatically rounded in surprise when she found the accidentally left envelope. Meanwhile, in the very space where the press was placed, its own orders and deeds reigned. A craftsman was congratulated by an important member of the guild in honor of the sale of a pink diamond at a high price. He gently stroked his pet's head, at the same time asking how much he was sold for. The guy carefully read the documentation provided to him by his accomplice. This is how he learned that the jewel was bought by Duke Seymour and not by Philip, as he had originally expected. Thoughtfully scrolling the coin, he summed up that all his previous expectations had not been confirmed. In the end, he came to the conclusion that he had clearly underestimated Deborah Seymour, knowing that she was the daughter of a duke. He turned to Gerard, reminding him that he had asked to keep a closer eye on her, as she was from an influential family. He only apologized, after which the master realized that it seemed that he had missed something. It was not for nothing that he felt a strange premonition, after which he was informed that they had come to him. Although the master was surprised at who it could be, he still immediately used a magic spell. His face immediately acquired a pale color and a tired appearance, communicating a certain sickness of its owner. Having ordered the unexpected guest to go inside, an unknown person in a cloak immediately appeared in his room. No sooner had the unexpected guest passed into the middle of the room than she was immediately swept over by a magical wind, tearing off her hood. The master's eyes widened as he recognized her as the same Deborah who had surprised him so much recently. He looked sternly at the girl who entered, trying to guess the motive for her appearance. There was an expected silence between them, revealing a sense of anticipation in the two of them. Deborah looked around at her future interlocutor, already knowing that he was a cunning man living in Blanche's lair. The girl understood that their interaction would not be easy because he is the most skillful and secret character. The reason for her arrival as a secondary character was the events that took place just a week ago. She knew that the seal had been placed by a man named Master Blanche, who was in the habit of sealing according to his mood. The stamp he put showed that he had sent her this letter in a good mood, which meant that he was pleased with the deal. She remembered some events from the novel, after which she learned about its seal system. On that day, the prince came to him, who reported that Deborah continued to mock the main character Mia. The crown prince said that he wanted to get rid of her, but it was not easy, since she was a direct descendant of the Seymour family. Master Blanche smiled when he heard that he was willing to give him anything he wanted if he could get rid of her. Further, he deliberately spread rumors that he could curse anyone, after which Deborah turned to him. After that, the unsuspecting girl falls into a trap by making herself a cursed doll. During the discussion of the plan, the crown prince still couldn't understand what this doll was for. He immediately understood the wizard when he said that thanks to her, Deborah would be accused of blasphemy. He immediately caught his idea, agreeing that even their noble family could not do anything against the saints. Deciding to proceed with the plan, the prince asked him to review the documents provided to him. He also mentioned that he would add a plot of land to him for this so that he would be satisfied. While Master Blanche was engaged in printing, he happily talked about the fact that he would finally be able to get rid of this woman. Noticing an interesting object, he said in surprise that it was the first time he had seen this cat seal on him. Answering that he puts it either when he is pleased with the deal or at special moments, the prince asked him if he liked this girl. He only replied with a smile that she just reminded him of the cat from this seal. When he finished explaining, he lovingly scratched his predatory cat behind the ear. When asked why her tail was raised, he replied that he would ask him for 9 gold and 99 silver coins. Deborah thought thoughtfully about how many heights the prince had achieved only thanks to the master, without having any special skills at the same time. Despite the fact that he has always been the most popular, no one would still be interested in him if it were not for Blanche. After thinking about it for a couple more seconds, an unexpected thought flashed through her mind. She beamed happily, realizing that she could similarly use the services of Master Blanche. Deborah lacked someone she could trust because of her reputation, so she wanted to ask for his help. She hoped that they would create a wonderful tandem since he would do everything for the sake of money, and she had only money. The girl carefully reread the contract, preparing for their upcoming meeting. A week later, she found herself in the Atra region, at the same time making sure that this area was developing well. During her trip, Deborah especially liked the fact that everything was so conveniently distributed. It was already gradually revealing its entrepreneurial streak, suggesting that it was an ideal place to invest. She looked carefully at the house in front of the carriage when she was informed of her arrival. The girl already knew that now this place is unknown to everyone, but after the sale of the diamond, it will become the most famous in the capital. As she stepped inside, Deborah could feel that smell of success. She immediately informed the servants that she was going to talk to the owner about the pink diamond. When she heard the offer to take her inside, she refused, knowing that she had to tell the password to the owner so that no one could hear them. The servant froze upon hearing her announce that she intended to make a deal with the 7th fang of the golden dragon. Deborah doubted to the end whether he would believe it, but the man still took her words. The girl breathed a sigh of relief when he agreed to escort her to the door. Once in front of the magician, she realized that at that time she did not know that the jewelry store was connected to the tower. Looking at the guest impassively, he said that he hadn't expected to see her here. To Deborah's unpleasant surprise, a beast of prey slowly approached her, looking at her as if she were its prey. The girl tried to force herself to be calm to the end, as she was convinced that she should not look frightened. Deborah's composure was rapidly running out when she was just a couple of centimeters away from the predator. The big cat slowed down noticeably, approaching her pocket, which she later sniffed contentedly. Deborah clearly did not appreciate this gesture, so she automatically held her breath in anticipation of the animal's actions. The girl's plan still worked, and the predator collapsed on the floor, exposing her soft belly. Her non-standard behavior caused a heap of emotions in all three of them, causing relief in the girl, shock in the man, and happiness in the animal. Realizing that she had almost screamed, Deborah still bent down to stroke her new friend. The best assistant in taming the animal was Catnip, the presence of which she was very happy about. Master Blanche was so shocked by what he saw that at first he could not say a word. He decided to attract the attention of the guest by moving the sofa towards her, using only his magical power. The girl was surprised at the cute name of such a frightening cat, which he named Cookie. Blanche was annoyed by such indiscreet behavior of his favorite, which immediately caused her to feel guilty. When asked what she had done to Cookie, Deborah put on the most serious expression on her face, telling him to pay 99 gold pieces. The mage was taken aback when he realized that the girl he had seen was using his own technique for the first time. The girl continued to hold the mark even after he burst into laughter. While he was trying to recover from her words, she was already examining him, comparing her expectations with reality. Deborah was extremely surprised that he looked larger than some soldiers, possessing such broad shoulders. She kept trying to figure out who he really was, while he frankly shared that she was the first to arouse his curiosity. The girl continued to try to keep a cold expression on her face, listening to the fact that he had forgotten what he was doing here even for a second. When asked why she had come, she immediately replied that she would like to know information about Louis Gazelle first. Like a robot, the mage immediately replied that he was the eldest son of a local lord who owned an estate on the western border. Deborah was surprised to finally realize that he lived in the West. She immediately figured out that Seymour's mansion was to the east, which showed Belek's desire to send her as far away as possible. Mentally wishing to beat her brother for such an expulsion, she folded her hands in displeasure, saying that she did not need ordinary information. Waving his hand, he began to dictate his terms in exchange for information about the man's weaknesses. Smiling contentedly, he directly hinted to her to pay by folding his fingers in the shape of a coin. The girl looked at him wearily, realizing that he wanted to get paid more. With a wave of her hand, she threw the contents of her pocket disdainfully on the table. Glancing at the mage haughtily, she said that this should be enough for their entire conversation. The man was taken aback when he saw how easily she provided him with a whole bag of jewelry. Deborah understood that the most important thing for everyone was to make a good first impression. The girl defiantly poured the contents on the table, saying that he was giving her information and she was giving him money. She recalled one episode from the novel, making sure that she should behave as coolly as possible when she gave money. Seeing the surprise on his face, she mentally asked if he would cooperate with her after such a thing or not. Accepting the stones with magical power, he said that he had no reason to refuse her after such sincere treatment. With a satisfied grin, he gave Deborah a piercing look, asking a rhetorical question about who in this world had no weaknesses. His expression made such an impression on her that she immediately felt that if Louis had no weaknesses, he would make them himself. Gathering her will into a fist, she remembered that because of this agile magician, her character ended up in a monastery in the novel. Realizing that he would be a profitable ally, she said that she would also like to talk about buying his goods. The girl's expectations were clearly not met when he began to bargain with her without even hearing the question being asked. She further stated that she would like to know the approximate cost, after which he immediately began to write on paper. The girl readily took the outstretched sheet in her hands and quickly ran her eyes over it, looking for the cherished numbers. She was truly stunned, finally getting to what she was looking for. Deborah wanted to sink into the ground and run away when she found out that he wanted as much as 10 billion. The girl's hands trembled when she remembered that she had originally counted on a maximum of 1 billion. She understood that the price was so high that, in her previous life, she wouldn't have been able to earn such an amount even in her entire life. The reluctance to become poor fought against the strongest lack of desire to marry the pervert Louis and live with him in the north. He sarcastically remarked that it wasn't such a big price for someone who had recently bought a necklace from her that was the size of an entire mansion. The magician was surprised when she announced her third desire to exchange these pink diamonds for gold coins. Recalling that she wanted the diamonds so much that she was even starving and under house arrest, he doubted her decision. Master Blanche was even more surprised when she bluntly stated that he would pay her in jewels if he wanted to hear an answer. His self-confidence caused a mage to smile, so he decided to take the course of the game. Despite the outward bravado, inwardly Deborah was extremely frightened and glad that his mood did not deteriorate. Reminding herself that she was the daughter of a duke, the girl tried to pull herself together despite the fact that he was a master. She knew only that he should not guess about her plans, since he would immediately want to take the most precious things from her. Smiling awkwardly, the young man asked her if she was going to sell the necklace without her father's permission. He recalled that her father would immediately become aware of the auction, after which he casually spoke about the option so as not to offend him and sell him. The girl froze with unpleasant surprise when he said that for this she would have to give the jewelry to him. Deborah was clearly not satisfied with this option, knowing that Blanche wanted to buy it for half the price. Looking at the girl shrewdly, the mage inwardly rejoiced at how deftly he was able to change his position. In Deborah's mind, the image of a diamond divided into 2 pieces immediately arose, which caused even more indignation. The girl was beside herself with the realization that she had been deceived by a real swindler. Folding her arms over her chest, she bluntly called his offer nonsense, calling this deal unprofitable. When he heard that she wanted to lose only 10%, he said that soon there would be another batch of such stones on the market. He made a compelling argument, insisting that if she gave them the diamond, they could sell it for twice the price. Handing the girl the coin he caught, he confidently stated that it would be beneficial for her to cooperate with him. Smiling wryly, Deborah knew that this was true, for only now would she be able to get rid of him profitably before the prices dropped. Not wanting to give in, she said that she was only willing to give him 30%, after which he agreed on the condition that she tell him what she had done to Cookie. Realizing that all this time the predatory cat was rubbing against her pocket, she again resented how difficult it was with him. She knew that catnip was only used as a medicine in their town, so the villagers did not know about this use. Deborah was sure that Cookie was very dear to him, so she should hold his interest. He looked at the girl in bewilderment when she said that in this case they leave 50/50ths. The mage suddenly asked her if there was an effective way to use the fund that was hidden from payment. The girl noted with sadness that despite the jewelry and money, she could not use them without the knowledge of the Duke. Due to the fact that unmarried girls cannot open their own bank account, she cannot save her own money now. Realizing that the girl was limited in her actions, the man clearly hinted that he knew about her weaknesses. Deborah stared wearily ahead, feeling how he had deftly outwitted her again. Realizing that she was losing control, the girl decided to use her last secret weapon, which she did not want to give away. She knew that he would like this stone, since it is difficult to extract and immediately goes to the magic tower. Agreeing with how valuable this thing was, he gifted the girl with a mysterious bag with one wave of his hand. Deborah held it thoughtfully in her hands, trying to figure out what it was. He explained that it combines the energy of expansion, space, and summoning, so that you can put a lot of coins in it. The girl was delighted with such a gift, learning that the risk of losing it is very small, since it can be summoned with the palm of your hand. She was overjoyed, rejoicing at such a pocket multifunctional safe. Seeing her reaction, he finally offered her to sign a contract. The girl's attention was attracted by the confidentiality clause, which instructed not to disclose the contract to anyone. Realizing once again that from now on she would be able to safely accumulate gold in a bag, Deborah immediately signed the contract. Handing him the papers, she immediately asked if there was any limit to the amount of gold she could store. She suddenly realized what she had done by telling him so calmly about the operations involved in secretly hiding gold. Looking at his impenetrable expression, the girl guessed whether he would keep his mouth shut or not. Deborah decided to show him her interest by saying that if she were him, she would have already bought the island and created a ghost company. She also explained that gold bars can be stored on the island without any problems, and with the help of the company, they can be used. Master Blanche was clearly interested in her idea, which was expressed by his sudden thoughtfulness. The girl thought about his words when he said that it would be even better to travel with a 9th-grade wizard. When he was told that it was impossible, he said that it would be very good, because then he could do something more than this bag. The magician said that as a token of gratitude for such an idea, he would provide her with a bribery fund absolutely free of charge. There was an awkward pause between them, after which he finally put a seal on the contract. Deborah was surprised to see her color reflecting his mood. Recognizing the drawing of the swan, she assumed that the master was dissatisfied with the deal and might not want to cooperate with it. The man handed her a business card, recommending that she not visit the area again so that everything would go smoothly. Deborah read the text carefully, being surprised to notice that there was a pastry shop on the street of Eunice he had proposed. Assuming that this popular store belonged to him, she realized that he was very rich. The master kindly replied that he was always happy to have wealthy clients when she asked if she could contact him. Deborah smiled goodbye as she pulled on her cloak and promised to see her again. Sometime after the girl left the office, he was finally able to relax, taking on his true form. He looked thoughtfully at the abandoned contract, realizing that she appeared extremely suddenly, leaving her no other choice. After his expectations were shattered by reality, he couldn't contain his interest in who Deborah was. The magician remembered her facial features, thinking that despite her arrogance, she had behaved dignified and not stupid. In particular, he was amused by her business idea of buying the island with tax evasion and creating a ghost company. He immediately thought of the option of implementing this plan in the mountains of Helia, where it would not be easy for the emperor to keep an eye on the manipulations of the accounting department. The master was mentally surprised that it was she who came up with this, not understanding how it was possible to think of such a thing. He also didn't expect her behavior to be so unpredictable that she would bargain like a crown prince. The young man remembered how she charged him a price of 99 zlotys, demanding that he pay for her answers. The mage concluded that it was very different from what he had heard about it before. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a man who appeared in the middle of the room. It turned out to be Miguel, a vassal of the Visconti family, who offered him to personally find out information about Deborah Seymour. Smirking, he only replied that he was unlikely to be able to pass by such an entertaining person. The vassal immediately decided to confirm the guess that the mage himself was going to investigate when he saw her at the academy. He was visibly surprised to learn that he was not going to refuse to attend the academy after all, wanting to improve his relationship with Deborah. When he heard that he wanted to know for free about what the girl had done to his pet, he immediately thought that this was the reason. The master was surprised by Miguel's question about how he was going to get close to her, after which he asked if he had seen his face at all. Seeing through his master's narcissism, he apologized for asking a stupid question. Taking out his magic bracelet, he also ordered Miguel to prepare to go to the academy. Finally, he asked to call the deputy guild to his office to add another stone to the bracelet. Changing his appearance again, he called the lavender color with a smile when he asked what kind of stone it was. Finally, 10 days later, Deborah decided to go to the address on the same business card. Driving through an empty alley, the girl involuntarily thought about the profitability of a possible business at such a point. She was suddenly torn out of the flow of thoughts by the view from the window, full of sunlight. The girl noticed with annoyance how quickly the time had come, indicating the imminent beginning of the academic year at the academy. She analyzed the future educational process, realizing that the main difficulty would be contact with the main character. Upon arrival, Deborah decided to proceed to the true purpose of her visit, checking the situation prevailing in the successful maison. The girl immediately noticed how many people had arrived to taste a limited number of delicious sweets. She also noted the success of the master's business strategy, aimed at exclusivity and limited quantities. After the waitress appeared, Deborah nevertheless decided to make an order, after inspecting the items in stock. Without hesitation, she pointed her finger at the name on the menu, telling him to bring her the specified coffee drink. The girl tried to dissuade her from this specific option, but Deborah insisted on her own, wanting to try it out. She beamed when she saw a tray with a magnificent dessert that caused real gourmand anticipation. Preparing for the fact that the cake and fresh coffee would create a great combination, the girl reached for the cup, taking the cherished sip. She was stunned when the waitress's warnings turned out to be true, and the coffee turned out to be extremely disgusting. The chosen drink had a terribly bitter taste, was tasteless, and smelled terrible. Deborah couldn't help but wonder if they had roasted the coffee beans incorrectly or brewed the coffee clumsily. As she continued to think about ideas for her business, she immediately realized that this option would not be suitable for her future business. Her attention was suddenly attracted by a loud conversation of a group of friends at the next table, discussing a rumor. After listening to a couple of lines, Deborah suggested that we are talking about another academic celebrity who makes girls fall in love. An image of the heir to the title of head of the Orgo family, named Dier, who had impressive swordsmanship skills, immediately appeared in her mind. She remembered that this was another character with whom the main character communicated, with whom he would be in love. One of the girls said that this guy is very cool, but she would still like to talk to Philip. She noticed that he had outstanding skills and gorgeous red hair that she admired. Hearing this, Deborah grimaced, not understanding where they had seen his unprecedented beauty. She involuntarily slammed her fork on the table when one of them started talking about wanting to meet Bellex Seymour. She wanted to bang her forehead on the table, listening to how smart and noble he was and how sorry they were that he graduated from the academy. The last straw was when their fan circle was closed by a phrase about the desire to meet Isidor Visconti. Deborah was completely broken by a sense of shame for other people's preferences, not understanding how they could be attracted to these guys. She still didn't understand what was going on with these girls talking so lightly about their feelings for guys. All this caused a feeling of sticky disgust in her, provoked by the discussion of the unknown Isidor. The brightly dressed girl sentimentally reasoned that it would be better for her to die, but to see the face of this man. Deborah was dizzy after all their speculation about his appearance, for which one of them had slept all winter to see him in her dreams. Tasting a rare dessert, the girl was again forced to listen when she heard the discussion of the diamonds sold. They all looked at each other enviously, realizing that Deborah Seymour was now his mistress. The girls animatedly discussed the fact that after this she would definitely turn up her nose, and this whole situation is disgusting. She awkwardly pulled up her hood as she heard that this necklace didn't fit her as a psychopath and wouldn't hide her squalor. They also discussed how she had recently kidnapped a Mrs. Helen, forcing her to work on an order regardless of the cue. Deborah struggled to remember the face of the seamstress they were talking about, until her image appeared in her head. The elegant-looking lady continued to shamelessly say that such arrogance were unacceptable for the nobility. Her insults did touch the chords of Deborah's soul when they spoke of her lack of talent and ineptitude in magic. She felt resentment for her character, realizing that making fun of her main complex is a cruel act. Deborah's ardent opponent was about to blurt out a new taunt, but stopped when she saw something wrong. As if anticipating possible negative consequences after what was said, she offered the ladies to drink tea. Her act made the girl even angrier, realizing that she did not want to talk about other members of the Seymour family, but spoke very ugly about Deborah. Feeling a fit of anger approaching, she stood up, wanting to return home as soon as possible, but accidentally touched a cup. Deborah cursed in her mind, knowing that if she crashed, people around her would definitely notice her. All her fears were confirmed, and the cup hit the floor with a crash, attracting the attention of everyone around, including their group. They were clearly unprepared for what they were about to see, which made one of them's face immediately burst into surprise. Deborah had frightened them with her appearance after they had washed her bones for a long time. She herself did not want to enter into a conflict with this group of girls and continued to blame herself for the fact that everything happened this way. Despite this, Deborah still decided to defend herself, realizing that she had no right to miss such statements from girls below her in status. Deborah Seymour no longer wanted to live like a rag, so she looked at them maliciously, saying that she had heard everything. She immediately made it clear that she knew everything from beginning to end, which automatically forced her to invent excuses. Not knowing what to say next, the girl decided to approach them to buy time, but stepped on the spilled coffee. She still managed to keep her balance and fall, but she still turned the table over, throwing it forward. Deborah looked around warily, realizing that she didn't want to do this, but still came to the conclusion that it was even better this way. She was radically determined to teach a lesson to all these shameless girls, trembling with fear of the one they were discussing. Wanting to show off her fervor, she approached the girl, claiming to have heard them talking about her. The envious woman was so frightened that in tears she tried to justify her impermissible behavior. Scorching her eyes, she mockingly asked why she was stuttering, when only recently she was chattering so confidently. Deborah bluntly stated that if they couldn't say anything to their faces, then they shouldn't even open their vile mouths. The two girls babbled guiltily, apologizing, but their friend clearly disagreed. She decided to put in her 2 cents, trying to rebuke Deborah for taking the designer right before Mrs. Birthday. Before she could finish saying that everyone thought her action was wrong, Deborah immediately poured coffee on her. The girl directly reminded her that she was much lower than her in status and a priori had no right to discuss her. After pouring every last drop on the offender's head, Deborah said with a smile that she could show her what it was like to cross the line. Unable to withstand such pressure from the girl, they promptly left the confectionery, asking for forgiveness again. She was finally alone, feeling her whole body trembling after this unpleasant scene where she had to say such a thing. Deborah glanced at the female observers standing behind and immediately concluded that her behavior was appropriate for the character. She understood that after such a meeting with the master could be difficult, so she should postpone it and end it here. Meanwhile, the master himself was extremely surprised when he was informed about an incident arranged by his recent client. He was so struck by the suddenness of her action that he even looked up from writing scrolls to find out what had happened. He thought hard when he heard that she had quarreled with the Earl's daughter 8 and ended up bringing her to tears. The mage clearly overestimated Deborah, assuming that she was smarter than he thought and acted in such a way as to force him to work properly. Miguel was clearly unhappy with his conclusion, as he did not understand at all how he could have come to such a conclusion. The master logically assumed that she decided to come herself to talk to him about the speed of fulfilling his obligations. Cookie listened to him talk about Deborah, hoping that she would come and play with her soon. Eventually, she felt disappointed to find that they were just gossiping about her motives. The magician looked dumbfounded at his pet when she was noticeably angry because of the lack of attention paid to her. The wildcat was so displeased that it instantly tore up the parchment that its owner had been working on all this time. Aware that she was behaving very strangely after Deborah's arrival, he was furious to find out what she had done to her. Meanwhile, the unknown dungeon had its own negative, dangerous atmosphere. Upon learning that his servant had missed the pink diamond, Philip was beside himself with rage, beating him until he bled. He still distracted himself to ask the man standing behind him if Miss Mia had arrived at his mansion. Philip was unpleasantly surprised by his negative answer, and when he inquired about the reason, he learned that she had many patients. He was surprised to notice that she was treating them even on her birthday, knowing that everyone needed her and considered her an incarnation. All victims of various ailments are very pleased with her divine powers, which she uses in the process of treatment. The guy furiously threw a bloody towel at the servant, indignant at the lack of understanding of her altruistic actions. Using his magical power, he confidently stated that if he had such power, he would not suffer from this. Despite this, Philip still liked the fact that she was not like everyone else, because she was not interested in either power or money. After a while, Mia still visited his house and sat quietly at the table, thanking him for the invitation. The guy made sure that the best dishes were prepared for their evening together. As if he had forgotten how cruel he had been just a couple of hours before, Philip was smiling at his favorite birthday girl. Mia Benoche awkwardly mentioned that she had forgotten about her birthday, which no one had ever reminded her of. Given that no one congratulated her this year, she was happy from the bottom of her heart, feeling his care. Feeling a surge of pride, Philip looked at the girl and said that it was beautifully said. Eventually, they were forced to switch from sentiment to food after Mia's stomach made a shrill sound. Burning with awkwardness, she asked for forgiveness, because she had not been able to eat for the whole day before due to the workload. The guy was not at all embarrassed by this incident, so he decided to unobtrusively change the topic of conversation, talking about an imminent study. She was overjoyed when she found out that Philip had contributed to her studies at the best academy of her dreams. Assuming a satisfied look, he solemnly handed her his main gift in the form of an expensive jewelry of heavenly color. At first she refused, insisting on future training at the academy, but he continued to convince her to accept the jewel. He felt that it didn't make as much of an impression as the diamond, which made her still refuse it. In his mind's eye, the desired scenario immediately arose, where Mia squeaks with joy when she sees a pink diamond. He fantasized about how much she would be touched by his act, demonstrating how much he loved and appreciated her. Dreaming of how she would do him good, he also dreamed of a passionate dance together that would promote feelings. Philip was extremely unhappy with the situation, as his illusions were forced to be shattered by the fact that he simply did not have enough money. He frantically continued to look for someone to blame for his failure, immediately settling on Deborah. The guy irritably cut the steak, mentally accusing her of constantly meddling in the wrong business, and this decoration does not suit her. In the end, the languid dinner came to an end, after which Mia sat quietly by the window of her house. The girl emotionally examined the space around, realizing that she was very tired. She was noticed by a woman who quietly entered the room, who was immediately surprised by the melancholic appearance of the previously joyful girl. Calling her Ophelia, Mia said that she was looking at the flowers, after which she abruptly began to talk about the change in the weather. Taking the necklace in her hands, she put it on the girl, learning along the way that it was given to her by Philip Montes. With the procedure finished, Ophelia stepped aside, further plunging Mia into doubt. Apparently, she herself realized the poverty of this jewelry, which testifies to the lack of refined taste. Mia listened thoughtfully to the fact that if worn with an old dress, everyone would definitely laugh and say that this was expected from the daughter of a fallen aristocrat. Ophelia left the girl, finally declaring that everything could have been different with the pink diamond. Feeling all the weight of her mother's words, the girl only looked sadly at the letter of admission to the academy. Her face was filled with a mass of unexpressed feelings and emotions experienced as a result of recent events. A few days later, Deborah was already preparing for the upcoming school day. Approaching the mirror, the girl herself was shocked by how magnificent the image she managed to create. She literally couldn't get away from the mirror, admiring her magical appearance. On the eve of such an important day, she again frightened the girl who had prepared all these dresses. In the end, Deborah was so fascinated that she herself did not realize how she pushed the massive mirror. She looked at her hands in surprise, realizing for the first time how strong her body was, distinguished by its endurance. Deborah still agreed that it takes a lot of strength to do evil, which is why she was given such a strong body. She readily turned to the butler when she heard that a carriage was waiting for her in front of the mansion. In spite of her magnificent appearance, she did not want to go at all and postponed this moment, looking at the carriages outside the house. She looked down carefully, trying to figure out whose carriage it was standing next to her. Eventually, her eyes were drawn to a cutely dressed boy looking warily at the servant's hands. After a pause, Deborah concentrated on his face, gradually recognizing his native features. At first, she had difficulty remembering the one she so rarely sees, until she recognized him as Enrique Seymour. After a couple of minutes, the boy still felt Deborah's piercing gaze directed directly at him. Before she had time to think about how cute he was, his eyes immediately filled with a mixture of contempt and disgust. The girl was instantly taken aback, not understanding the reason why she could cause such a change in the boy's mood. She sprawled in shock at the window from the realization that even this child hated her because of her previous actions. Unlike Deborah, Enrique is a genius who ranked first among the most gifted and talented mages in the Magic Tower. Watching the boy being praised, Deborah was obsessed with the thought that she could do nothing. All this time, she was consumed by a feeling of inferiority, since even a child was able to master magic at such a level. The girl continued to reflect, not understanding how she could mock the child like that. She realized that the root of the problem was that she was constantly compared to her brothers, causing huge complexes. Even so, she still didn't understand how it was possible to hate such a cutie. Finally, after some time, they finally reached the Horn District, where the Imperial Palace and Academy are located. The girl looked out the window in shock, seeing a bunch of carriages standing in a row, forming a huge queue. Realizing that they had been waiting all along, Deborah realized that they should have left earlier. Fortunately for her, several servants came up to the carriage, talking inaudibly to the coachman. Seeing how abruptly they turned into the open road, she felt all the charm of the taste of power, leaving the queue. The girl was delighted with how quickly they got out of this situation just because of her status as a noble. All the students in the audience were shocked to finally see the frightening Deborah. At first, she modestly opened the door, slowly stepping inside in her magnificent Gothic attire. Thinking about where to sit, she critically stared at the two guys sitting right in her favorite place. They were frightened by how much she was eating them with her gaze, thinking that she was extremely hostile. In the end, as soon as she looked at them, they immediately walked away, which caused a certain degree of dissatisfaction in the girl. Deborah came to the unpleasant conclusion that wherever she went, everyone else was wary of her. The girl was forced to distract herself from pressing problems when a new student entered the office. It turned out to be the self-confident Philip, who appeared in the company of Mia Benoshi. She looked warily at the member of the Montes family, feeling a strange impulse in her body. Philip himself paid attention to the girl whom he had recently condemned for destroying his plans. The girl lowered her gaze, trying to understand why her body reacted as if it were a coded program. She automatically remembered their first meeting when she got into a dangerous situation involving a fire. Everyone was panicking, screaming about a fire because her dress had been set ablaze by the flame of the candle. She was unexpectedly saved by Philip, who kindly extinguished the flames with his magic. Although he did it out of politeness, Deborah still fell in love with him, imagining him to be her hero. Since then, she began to run after him, trying to conclude an engagement, but Philip rejected her in every possible way, hurting the girl's pride. She looked at the guy again warily, realizing that she hadn't behaved quite right in the past. Despite this, she still didn't understand the reason why he was staring at her like that. To her surprise, Philip courageously covered Mia with his body, thinking that Deborah was going to hurt her. The girl was beside herself with how absurd this gesture was on his part. Trying to understand what had happened, Mia looked out from behind her fan, pleasantly surprised by the sitting girl. Deborah similarly shared her feelings, marveling at how innocent she was of her beauty. Philip himself was surprised by the unexpected spark of sympathy that arose between the two girls. Mia Benoche caught his attention by admiring how many beautiful and sophisticated people there were in the capital. He couldn't understand what she was talking about until his chosen one pointed to a sitting girl with purple hair. Philip clearly did not share her delight when he heard about Deborah's true guts. He still couldn't understand why she was so calm, given her passion for bragging and provocation. Meanwhile, she was only peacefully looking at the view from the window, not even thinking about his guesses that she was trying to attract attention in this way. In the end, the guy still came to the idea that she looked very elegant and pretty. He felt caught and jumped on the spot as Mia pulled him away, noticing that he was in the clouds. Deciding to divert her attention, he deftly took her hand, playfully declaring that she was much more beautiful and elegant. Deborah mentally suffered from hearing all this, realizing that she wanted to sleep more and more. In the end, the girl still fell asleep right in class, absolutely not embarrassed by the teacher and everyone else. In her mind, there were still vague fragments from her past life, where she was gullible and unremarkable. She looked at the guy in surprise when he suddenly offered her to go and eat at his expense. He still insisted on his own, and they had lunch together until he suddenly announced that he wanted coffee, knowing that she would pay. Her mood immediately changed when the guy announced that he wanted a new drink that was twice the price of their breakfast. Deborah's eyes widened in fright, as if she had woken up from a terrible dream that had tormented her for years. She instantly stood up, but suddenly felt her head resting on an unknown object. This object turned out to be the same handsome man who boldly reminded her that the lesson was over. The girl looked around in surprise, unexpectedly catching herself thinking about how this guy could be so handsome. Despite his deliberately friendly appearance, Deborah asked him rudely who he was. Trying to smooth out the corners, he asked her if she really did not know who he was, which immediately caused a heap of attempts to remember. After a couple of long seconds, he finally realized her bewilderment and introduced himself, calling himself Isidor Visconti. Deborah remembered that he was the favorite of all those girls and assumed that he would be successful in Korea. Asking him what exactly he wanted, she stared at the sheets of material he had handed her. In her mind, an association immediately arose with the same guy who had cruelly used her before. Deborah stopped, realizing that she had met that scoundrel in the same way. To her surprise, he only asked if she was having a nightmare, given the way she frowned in her sleep. Isidor deliberately approached his acquaintance, almost insisting that they have lunch or drink tea. Not understanding the reason for his benevolent behavior, Deborah stood up, declaring that she did not have time. No sooner had he tried to detain her than she immediately slipped out of the office. Embarrassed, Deborah herself did not understand how she left the office because his presence caused a strong excitement in her.